Hi everyone, today I'm going to be responding to a recent Blaire White video called Feminism, the Biggest Joke, and it's about Women's March. First off, I want to emphasise that I do have my own criticisms of these kind of anti-Trump marches, and some of them are outlined in my video on the United States of America. I also think it's important to point out some of the flaws in Blaire's arguments, and that this new intro Blaire has is a little bit thirsty as well.
Hi.
I mean, Blaire, you couldn't have made it any more obvious that you want this hair flick thing to become a meme if you'd had turned it into a GIF and tweeted it yourself before you released this video. Oh, you did.
You guys know that this channel started out with me criticizing feminism, and you may have noticed, but I had moved on to other topics because I've kind of have felt like feminism is dead.
During the election, making fun of fat people, Islam, BLM, so hot. Feminism, so not. It was like dead.
It kind of felt like beating a dead horse for a while. But honey, that's not the case.
Blaire is suspiciously good at keeping up with anti-feminist trends on YouTube.
Feminism seems to be alive and stronger than ever.
Oh, it's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
A women's march assembled around the world recently, and millions of women took to the street in their vagina hats. And
those hats aren't vagina hats. Look, you can see their cat ears. Do not take an image of that hat to your surgeon, mate. You will regret it.
Vagina costumes.
These are a little bit more accurate in their depiction of a vagina, but I still wouldn't take them in.
To protest against being objectified for their vaginas.
Blaire, I see you're contributing to the chorus of trans activists who have expressed horror and dismay at the idea of women talking about their female biology. Just like this chap who resolved to throw pictures of penises at women because he felt they were cis-privileged.
As a staunch supporter of the First Amendment, I fully support their right to assemble peacefully and not do things like light female Trump supporters' hair on fire.
No justice! No justice for democracy but right!
It's just as well that guy behind her put out the fire before anybody was hurt.
Not protect male feminists who punched female reporters at their march.
Whoa! Guys, let's calm down. Calm down.
You don't have the right to film me everywhere you go.
Yes, she does. Just like
Yeah, dude, you just hit me in the face.
Protect him from who? The female reporter whose camera he just punched. The normal thing to do when there's no security or police in the immediate vicinity and you see someone get hit, if you are feeling brave enough to put yourself at risk, is to get between the attacker and the person they are attacking to make sure that the situation doesn't escalate. If you go to the rebel media and you watch the full footage, I think they were just trying to make sure that no one gets hurt.
And not talk about blowing up the White House.
Yes, I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
Madonna's clearly talking about her thoughts, not her intentions there. I'm pretty sure the First Amendment that you said you fully support a few seconds ago does cover that. I guess US patriots might have reason to view Madonna as a credible threat, given her eerie ability to reinvent herself. But if Madonna was sent to Guantanamo Bay, Lady Gaga might have to up her game, and what would become of America then?
And you know, it was mostly peaceful.
We talk about a couple of incidents in millions of people getting together.
However, personally for me, the march left a lot to be desired.
So Blaire, are you reviewing the march now?
I wasn't really sure what the goal of the march was.
I thought you said you thought the march was because women thought they were being objectified. I mean, I have no idea, but that's what you said.
I mean, of course it ran under the nebulous guise of women's rights, but I can't think of a single right that women are denied that men have.
Blaire, are you talking about women in the USA or women who aren't in the USA? Because US policy does actually affect women all around the world, what with it being the world's largest superpower with the world's largest arsenal. Assuming you are talking about women in the USA, if you're defining women as anyone who identifies as being a woman, like yourself, there is no difference between men who identify as a woman and men. But if you're defining women by their biology and recognising there are sex differences between males and females, then it's worth noting that in some states in America, there are women who can be sent to prison for suspected abortion, and what that means in practice is that a woman can be sent to prison even if she's just had a miscarriage. This kind of legislation does not restrict men's freedoms or rights, given that men cannot get pregnant.
To me, the march just seemed like a circle jerk, feel-good festival, like anti-Trump hug box. with no real tangible goal.
I agree with you there, which is why, unless you're going for a full-scale revolution, you need to focus on a single-issue approach. The single-issue approach allows you to make alliances which suit your cause. You don't have to bring together a bunch of people and figure out how to get them all to agree on everything all the time. So that's the activist approach that I think works best for women, especially given that we don't have much power.
And I tweeted something to that effect, and I had thousands of feminists responding to me
Blair White has thousands of feminists following him on Twitter.
about how I'm privileged, how I'm white, how I don't know what I'm talking about.
Funny how those so-called feminists didn't mention the fact you were male though, Blair, eh?
But no one could answer, I mean, out of thousands.
For you to read through thousands of tweets like that shows your dedication to feminism.
Not one person could answer the simple question, what rights are you lacking?
I explained that already.
A lot of them said that it's less about missing rights and more about standing in solidarity against Trump.
Yeah, and I think that's true, which is probably why this march should not have been called the Women's March.
That makes it seem like even more of a feel-good fest because parading around in vagina hats
They're not vagina hats, Blair. They don't even look remotely like vaginas. They have cat ears.
is not going to change the fact that he was inaugurated.
Were they protesting his inauguration though, or his policies? This is a genuine question, because I haven't a clue what they were actually protesting.
If they had actually provided any measured retorts to any official White House positions, that would be valid, but try as I might, I couldn't find any.
To be fair though, you only looked on Twitter to see what your thousands of feminist followers thought.
I saw a lot of I heart vagina signs and this pussy grabs back and don't grab my pussy.
Were you at the march, Blair? Because it's starting to sound a bit like you were.
I saw those signs on a lot of little kids, by the way, which was gross to me.
None of the pictures you presented seemed to be little kids. Were you at the march is what I have to ask. Wait, I think there you are.
Basically, it was just a lot of shit that didn't really mean anything.
Right now, female anatomy does have a lot of meaning because you've got a bunch of people trying to say that acknowledging that there are sex differences between men and women is hate speech.
I also saw a lot of infighting.
It's funny though, the infighting you don't mention.
And I mean, the anti-man stuff, men should be eradicated signs, those are going to be, popping up at really any feminist gathering.
I can tell you've been to a lot of feminist gatherings, Blair. We're mad us. We don't even pass our own Bechdel test. I've got my own little set of placards. My favourite one says, "Men are icky, go away." And I carry it around every time I go to meet up with my feminist friends.
What was more telling to me was all the anti-white woman signs, which at that point, I think it becomes pretty clear that the march wasn't really about women.
I cannot disagree with you there.
It was about being a leftist.
I wouldn't really say that Democrats were left in any way. They're very neoliberal.
That's why marchers also ripped up the signs and spit on pro-life women who were trying to march with them, because it wasn't about being a woman, it was about being a leftist.
I don't condone spitting on anyone, but feminism isn't about being a woman. It's about women's rights, which is partly why it's so ridiculous that these men who identify as being women demand to be included in it.
I was so embarrassed for them that I kind of wanted to be a man again.
No matter how many times you flick your hair or stroke your hair, you are a man.
One thing that I think you guys should be aware of that really blew my mind was that the national co-chair of the march, so one of the main organizers of the entire event, is on record saying that Sharia law is reasonable.
Yeah, that's liberal feminism all over. Anti-woman, patriarchal ideas such as Sharia law and transgenderism. This ridiculous intersectional feminism is anti-feminist.
Yes, the head of a women's rights march is advocating a system that subjugates women.
Blair's very worried about the subjugation of women, you see.
Oh yeah, and if one leader advocating for Sharia law wasn't bad enough, the credibility of the march spirals down even further with Cecile Richards.
What gives credibility to a political march is not who turns up to speak, but how many people turn up. That's kind of democracy 101.
I mean, you can't make this shit up. You have the speaker advocating for Sharia, you have a speaker who squeezed someone's testicles with pliers, and you have Madonna talking about blowing up the White House.
It's a wonder that men have the courage to leave the house. Really, it is.
I guess it's just tragic to see how feminism has dwindled down to this.
Dwindled? A minute ago, I thought it was a threat to homeland security.
It seems like all the crazies in the second wave have completely taken over the third wave.
Who are these crazies from the second wave?
And it's populated entirely by young women who are more enamored with virtue signaling and being a part of something rather than enacting real change.
Wait, let me get this straight. All the crazies from the second wave have taken over the third wave and magically transformed into young women? How's that work?
I mean, where were all these millions of feminists organizing marches for the women in Saudi Arabia?
I've already explained that in my video on the United States of America.
You know, the women suffering under that system that the leader of this women's march is advocating for?
Is your money going towards funding this regime? Notice Saudi Arabia on the list of countries that Trump went to sign an executive order to block refugees coming into the US from. By the way, there was an exception in that executive order for Christians escaping persecution, but not for women.
I think there's some perspective to be gained here when feminists who marched in this march realized that in comparison to those women in Saudi Arabia, the biggest call to arms for their movement in history has been over their president 10 years ago making a comment about grabbing pussies.
Fact is, we don't really know where they were protesting because they were a bit all over the place. But I will say this, you're a bit of a hypocrite to complain about the fact that these people aren't protesting Saudi Arabia when actually men in the US are more concerned about money going to services for women's health than they are about money going to Saudi Arabia when you think about it.
Smells like privilege.
The First Amendment, you said at the beginning of this video that you fully support, is not a privilege, it's a right.
And that's all for now.
And that's all from me as well.
Hi.
What's going on in our